and that's the scary part to me because people pretend like this doesn't affect them. And right now you might not be able to feel it,
Mm.
but I'm like, America, we have we've kind of sat in our ivory towers. Like we're across an ocean. We have good alliances with, Canada. We didn't with Mexico, but right now it's pretty solid with Mexico and stuff. We've got the largest military in the world, and we've just kind of sat over here, and anytime anything's ever happened, it's over there, and people have just become complacent, and it's like, guys, that I don't know.
Well, that's the problem with Americans is having the biggest military in the world and having the biggest GDP in the world means you can be complacent. That's the problem. Um, and that is where all this bullshit in America stems from. And the people America owe it to, the people that America owe all this shit to, is the guys in World War One, World War Two, storming Normandy Beach, things like that. That's who America owe all of what they've got to, and that's who naive Americans, these fucking people that you see on the TV, who you're like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, how did you come up with this opinion? Those people, they don't deserve the gender science major bloody professor telling them this. The people who they should thank for having to have that opinion is the guys that stormed Normandy Beach. Um, the problem is those guys did such a good job, and America's been so overly successful. No one can touch America. There's no fucking threat. You make $20 trillion a year or $25 trillion a year. You've got the biggest military times 10 of anyone else, times 20 of anyone else. You can afford to be. You can afford that. You can afford the freedoms Americans have. You can afford to be a Trump guy or a Biden person, and you. I shouldn't say I spend much time in America, but there's no one gets
Mhm.
like there's no like criminal thing. You wear a Trump hat in the street, like people might call you a dickhead or a Biden hat, but as far as, are you going to be actually strung up by the fucking balls in the street and murdered like you will in some countries? No. And America is the greatest country as far as great, maybe not as far as great as education or other things, but as far as great nations in the point of, they have a fucking man on the moon, my nations. It
Mhm.
is, and it is. It's the biggest country that's ever existed. But the problem with that is, in a country where you can afford to be naive because you're safe, there's money, and there's a military, breeds more and more fucking naivety. No one in Ukraine, mate, walks around, and this. I loved Ukraine, man. Like I spent 5 weeks in Ukraine before the war. Fucking fantastic, because no one's fucking delusional. Like a lot
Mhm.
of people, I know this is on the right and left wing. People are fucking delusional about how the world works, and
Mhm.
we have the same in Australia, mate. Trust me. They're just delusional about this. And I love Ukrainians, fucking savages, because they're like, no, in 1919, 1920, whatever it was, the Soviet Union was responsible for something, maybe 16 million Ukrainians starving to death. That's
Mhm.
their fucking history. They didn't have the history of, yeah, after World Wars, it was American flags in the street and kissing women and fucking hoorah shit. That's
Mhm.
not their fucking memory. Their
Right.
memory was 100 million Soviets fucking died. We ran into places with no weapons, just hoping to take it over. No one came back from the war. Those that did came into poverty, like
Yeah.
not poverty, trailer park poverty, poverty, real fucking poverty.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then mainland Muscovites starved us to death.
Mhm.
That's what they went through. And that's the history of, and that's not history 1,000 years ago. That's history. Oh, yeah, my granddad
Yeah.
my dad, you're
Yeah.
like, what? My dad fought in fucking Chechnya, or my dad fought in Afghan with the Soviets. Like, holy fuck, what? Um, and they have this savage history, and they haven't forgotten the realities of the world. You sit, look at LA or something, or look at Melbourne in Australia. These sort of more progressive cities. People have forgotten real hard, like have forgotten proper hardship. That
Mhm.
no, this shit, things just don't come. Food doesn't just come from the supermarket. Wars aren't just fought and won across the world. Um, and the credit where credit's due to the Ukrainian civilians, they are hard motherfuckers, mate. Like at the moment, Kiev this morning is sitting in the dark, sitting in the freezing, sitting in the dark. Think about if the power goes out in my suburb here, or probably your suburb there, Within 5 minutes, people are calling the Electricity Commission going, what the fuck's going on? They're on Twitter going, well, this is fucking bullshit. We're living in poverty. People haven't forgotten that there. And this is America's problem, is Americans and Australians have had it too good for too long. Now, I don't want it to change. But in my opinion, in the way the world's going, we're going to start seeing some proper hardships. We're going to see food insecurity. And Americans and Australians and Canadians and whatever have sort of dug our own grave on this because we haven't had to be resilient. And it's that hard men create good times. And we've lived, I'll say since Korea, we have lived in a good time. We have lived in a time of money fucking everywhere. Like realistically, like America in the 90s, early 80s was just fucking money everywhere. Like I know people disagree with me on that, but you can't look at individual circumstances. You need to look at the country's circumstance. We had, after Korea, man on the fucking moon, this and that, and all this shit. And Australia had a lesser degree, of course, going to 10th the population, but similar things. Fuck, we're doing this, we're building this, and building that. In my opinion, that shit's going to stop, and it's going to stop really fucking quickly. And we don't know the hardships, and that's Americans' problem on both sides. Is I think people underestimate the brilliantness of America being able to speak your mind. That you could be a far right wing guy, far left wing person, and I think a lot of them forget that the only reason you can do that is because someone somewhere laid down their life for you to do that. Then the reason you and I can talk here and not know the police, like you and I, we know the police are not going to knock on our door after this. We have 100% knowing that's not going to happen. If you and me are in most countries in the world, like most countries in the world, talking as openly as this, shitting on our president, shitting on the prime minister, bro, most countries, and we, like, yeah, you got to remember Australia, America, sort of the NATO countries, they're 5% of the total countries. Like, holy shit. We are incredibly fucking lucky people, and our luck might be coming to an end, and we need to be prepared for that.
And that's the thing that I think people need to kind of pull their head out of their ass a little bit, is that we kind of consider ourselves exceptional, and I did for a long time, considered myself exceptional just because I was born inside the United States, and I think that's why we allow those things to go on in other countries like Africa and even in South America. I mean, connected by land to the United States, where things like that, the cartel, I mean, they run rampant. I mean, they'll just execute people left and right for saying the wrong thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't really care because we're in America. And I mean, we're really what matters. We're exceptional. We're, and even people bring religion into it. We're the last stronghold of, true Christianity, or, the last stronghold of freedom, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just really sickening to see people kind of believing that just because they're either an American or probably Australian, Canadian, British or French or whatever, that they are above the suffering of an African, of a South American, I mean, it's just, I guess over the last 5 years, my eyes have just really, I mean, been like, holy shit, what are we humans doing? And
the reason we give a shit about Ukrainians, the Ukrainian war, is because it's a war in Europe and it's directly affecting us. That's it.
Right.
That is it. That's and the only reason why my stuff was successful and all of that is because of that reason. This shit, you don't think genocide happens in Africa every single day? You don't think that the West Papuans in Indonesia are being genocided by the thousands? That's happening all around the fucking world. But does it affect us? No. Australia's even worse, mate. Australia sell weapons to the Indonesians, and the Indonesians are fucking complete genocide against West Papuan people. And America would be the same, and I don't have a clear example, but there would be complete examples of America selling weapons to ex-Africans or whatever and genociding people. Does that affect everyday Americans or Australians? No, we don't give a fuck. And we give a shit because it's white people in Europe. And and this is on. I don't care if you're the most progressive, most conservative person in the world. Both of you have a instinctive thing of selfishness, and you're saying white people in a country that we sort of more identify with because they look like us, they talk like us, and they're in a country that we recognise as Europe, European buildings, blah blah blah, being killed.
Yeah.
That's the reason people care, and that's disgusting. And the prejudice. I try and take that as much as I can, and that's why at the moment I'm doing a lot of, or trying to do a lot of work in Africa. That's sort of what I'm doing next. Um,
Hmm.
and that's what it is. And I see people
I'll
with
be
your
looking forward to that one.
Ukrainian flag on their profile picture, and you're like, hang on, you're like part of this like progressive community, whatever. Hang on, fucking, what about all these other genocides that happened that your
Yeah.
country was actually involved in? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, and you're this. It's funny because you'll have this like what I've always laughed at, and people are going to call me a crazy conservative, but is I'll look at people who got the LGBT flag or the Black Lives Matter flag or something like that, and put it like the fist or whatever it is, and that'll be with their Ukrainian one. And
Hmm.
my thing is, go to Ukraine, and see how that fucking goes.
Yeah.
Trust me, Ukraine is not Denmark. Ukraine is not this democratic fucking free country like you fucking think it is. Go to Ukraine, put an LGBT flag on you, and walk around with that on. See how that fucking ends for you. Um,
Yeah.
go to Ukraine as a well, actually, don't go to Ukraine as a black person. Uh,
Right.
or
Right.
go there and you will see maybe real racial prejudice.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I'm an Australian. Australians are known for being fucking racist, and I won't deny that there's a degree in the culture of racist jokes and stuff. I wouldn't say we are racist in the traditional sense, because I've never seen a person of color here actually have like a prejudice against them of no, he didn't get the job because he's black. But there's jokes, there's this, there's that, and if you want to say that is okay, go for it. Australians are known for being racist. I when I was multiple times in Ukraine, multiple times, my jaw was on the fucking ground with things said, things come out, and I'm like, these people are just jumping on a bandwagon of things that affect them, and you're like, if you really give a shit, if you really gave a shit about, say, for example, feminism, you really give a shit about feminism, you're not marching through Melbourne or Sydney
Yeah.
with your top off saying that every CEO should be a female.
Go to
If
Pakistan or some
you
shit.
really gave a fuck, go to Afghanistan or look in Afghanistan, look into Iran,
Hmm.
look into fucking Saudi Arabia. Look into
Hmm.
fucking Saudi. We're sending and we're spending billions. The fucking football's being held there, like the soccer. No one, where's everyone speaking up against that?
Hmm.
Like, hang on. It's because it affects you. Like, you don't
Yeah.
don't think you give a shit about this. You want to talk about LGBTO rights, and you want to talk about that transition surgery should be, free in Australia under a public healthcare. Talk about that. I don't give a shit. But
Mhm.
look at around the world. You come out in the majority of countries, and the absolute majority, 90% plus of countries, you you could be fucking beheaded. And
Yeah.
I think there's this degree of like, don't be fucking naive to things. You have it pretty fucking good. Um, the world isn't America or isn't Australia. The world is a fucking mean place,
Yeah.
and most of it you turn a blind eye to because you just do.
And most people, and it's really crazy because I think, technically there are people that hear about some of this stuff, like in Afghanistan, they would have known that women are still heavily subjugated and stuff, right?
Mm.
But most of them wouldn't think twice, I don't think, about this going on in as many countries as it does. Like, I don't, it's just kind of amazing how we're surrounded by as much information as we are, and yet people know so little about what is actually going on in the world. And I think that's why some of us can get shocked when something like this, like Ukraine and Russia happens. Which, like I said, we shouldn't be. I was in the military. I shouldn't be shocked by anything that goes on. And I'm pretty well read in history and everything like that, or fairly decent. And I also am aware that a lot of the craziest, bloodiest shit that's happened in world history has happened within the lifetime of people still alive today.
Yeah.
But most people, including myself for a long time, we never thought about that.
Ah.
We thought we were beyond all that stuff. And
Mm.
now when they're sitting here fighting for rights, we're kind of fighting from one ivory tower to the other.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, we're not looking at the little, peasants that are down there fighting for their food. We're just lobbing arrows back and forth from one ivory castle to the next.
yeah, and that's something I find really disgusting about a lot of the civil rights movement stuff. Is I'm like, you don't actually care about human civil rights. You care about yours. Um, and the people, it's funny, the people that care more about that stuff is people that you probably say that don't. Um, and as people, oh, these billionaires are doing this in Africa and building this mine and making $1 billion. But how many people is he employing there? Like he's putting food and water on the table. Like there's a lot of it. I'm like a lot of it. I get like worked up, especially about Afghan. Like if you really give a shit about this cause, you'd care about those women or those kids or those gay people or whatever.
Yeah.
You wouldn't care about this ivory tower bullshit that we all live in. And I think that this ivory tower is going to collapse.
Hmm.
And I think this war could be the precursor to it. In many ways, I almost want it to because I'm like, it's almost been too long. At
Hmm.
some point, we've got to deal with our consequences of being naive to the world.
And something has to change eventually. I mean, because like we said, all of these atrocities that have been committed by any great nation that's ever
Mm.
graced the face of the earth, any empire has done it. Really, I mean, Rome and I mean Persians, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, just horrible shit. And America and Europe, all of that. We're no exception to it.
No,
And
cool.
you kind of think that at some point in time, I mean, like, how long are we just going to continue to exist in a world like this? Like, when, I mean, do you see any out? I mean, like we talk about like things collapsing and stuff, but then what? Like, I mean, are we actually going to change our shit, or are we just going to rebuild the same shitty thing that we established thousands of years ago? Like,
Oh,
I
all,
mean,
all that'll happen is eventually we'll blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons, and then we'll start again from sticks and stones, and in 5,000 more years we'll blow ourselves up again with nuclear weapons. That's the way this will it'll just rotate. Humanity will get to a point where we are so like advanced that then we'll end up killing ourselves and then restart again.
mm,
Um, we'll start with stones and as cavemen, and then we'll get there again in a few thousand years, and then we'll fucking collapse again. That
mm,
that's just, in my opinion, how things will eventually just roll over. And to me, it feels like we're in this pointy end of it. It feels like holy shit, there's not much. And back to Ukraine, Russia, like I don't think people understand how on the edge of nuclear war we really fucking are.
mhm,
You've got a country with the most nuclear warheads in the world, with ICBMs everywhere, saying that I will nuke a fucking country. Like, what if it's not a bluff? Like people, oh no, Putin's bluff. What if he's not? Like,
mhm,
God, like, holy fuck! Like,
mhm,
um, listen to the man. Like, if someone with, and this isn't North Korea where we're like, yeah, well, righto, you might have one, or you
mhm,
might have a few that won't reach, whatever.
mhm,
But we know they've got thousands. We know they've got submarines that are undetectable, full of nuclear ICBMs. Um, you know, holy fuck! Like people don't realize, like when was the last time from a power that could destroy the world was there a real threat of nuclear war in the in the Cold War? And a lot of people say we are way closer to that in the Cold War now than now.
mhm,
Um, sorry, closer now than we were in the Cold War.
mhm,
Um, and it's like, and this is something I'm like, I don't know how this will end up, but I think that threat of nuclear war is insane.
mhm,
Um, and um, what it has to have, or what it will be, is what America's response is. What do America do if Russia, worst case scenario, Russia drop a nuclear weapon on Kiev? What then does America do? And America's decision, and those in power, who I don't have trust in anyone in power in America, and included in Australia, and included in Canada, and in France and Germany, I
mhm.
don't have trust in anyone.
You're not
Um,
offending me, but
no. And well, I think a lot of people, even if they liked Biden, would say he's not the man we want making this decision. That
right.
if you like Biden, oh, he's good for schools and healthcare and blah blah, whatever your argument might be. If you said, do you want him in a war? Most people say no. Um, because this is a decision. And I'll put this scenario to you. Russia launched an ICBM, flatten 20 squares, 20 blocks of Kiev, kill 1 million people. The decision that comes in front of the powers to be in France and America and other nuclear powers is, do we end the war with Ukraine? Is the war done? We cut off supply, or do we end the world? That is the decision. That is it. And you think Putin doesn't know that? And in my opinion, I'm not a fan of Biden or Trump or anyone myself. Like, I'm not a fan of, well, I don't follow much American politics, so I don't really have a say. But like, both of them, I'm like, oh, because I think when I think president, I don't give a shit about education and schools. I think about war. I want the guy that should be there in time of war. That's when a president's important. Even on the extremes of Biden or Trump, if that decision came, you either end the world, you end humanity, or you end the war with Ukraine. The decision to stop Ukraine war is the correct one, because it may end in millions of deaths, not billions. And that's what happens. And the thing is, though, if that decision is fumbled and, oh no, fuck it, launch a bomb on Moscow, well, the world's done. Humanity is done. It's over. And where I'm going with this is, Putin knows this. Putin would be pretty confident in, if I do drop a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, they're going to put sanctions against me. They're going to call me they're going to do all this, but they're not going to bomb St. Petersburg and Moscow. Because, and if they do, well, he knows that, well, they trust anyway. Me. If they pick up an ICBM coming to Moscow, it would be, okay, everything, launch fucking everything. And, well, I'm dead anyway. And that would be Putin's, well, I'm going to die anyway. And he would know this. And that's the reason he's comfortable throughout the nuclear thing. And in my opinion, I honestly believe we are going to see a nuclear strike in Ukraine. I don't want it to be. I love Ukrainian people, are wonderful, wonderful people. And the death and whatever, and it would start a whole new Cold War. And the repercussions for everyone is huge from this. But Putin knows that we're not going to retaliate to that. He knows we're not. Like, and if we did, we are fucking idiots and we deserve what's coming to us. You can't, Ukraine, a country of 40 million people, America can't sit there and go, we're going to jeopardize every single living being on our country and on Earth for that. No. And people don't understand, that's what nuclear weapons do. If you want to look up, go look up some things on YouTube about modern ICBMs. Like you're not surviving. And I live next to the submarine base in Australia.
I don't think that the West would retaliate anyways, because I don't really think. I mean, I don't want to just make it all sound so cold, but yet in all reality, they're not there actually trying to help the Ukrainian people. So if they drop a nuke in Ukraine, I mean, I think they'd just be like, okay, well, like you said, if they're left with the two options, I mean, it's like, well, they're just going to throw their hands up and turn around and walk away, essentially. I mean, I'm not saying that they're not going to sit there and talk a mad game or try to salvage something. I don't know. But, I mean, they're not going to sit there and try to fight Russia over Ukraine like that, because I don't really think that they actually give that much of a shit about it.
Of course actually. They don't. And the America, look at America, look at the West, look at the weapons West gave. West gave Ukraine enough weapons, and it's disgusting what they've done. In my opinion, the West should have either given Ukraine nothing or everything. What they've done, and that should have been a decision, we give them everything to win the war, or we give them nothing, and the human suffering of the people will be 24 hours. What we've done is we've given them this bullshit trickle feed of stuff to maintain the war for as long as possible. And you're like, hang on, we've just increased human suffering fucking massive. Because it's like, oh, we're giving them 10 HIMARS, and America's got 1,000 of them. And I'm like, hang on. If America really gave a shit, if they really gave a fuck about Ukraine winning this, they'd give them all of it. And Australia wouldn't go, and we wouldn't pussyfoot around and go, oh, well, we can't train you to fly an F-16, so we're going to buy these shitty old MiGs from somewhere and whatever. You'd be like, fuck it. Okay, get in. If you can't fly it and crash it, who gives a fuck? America's got thousands of F-16s. We've pussyfooted around. We've given them enough to maintain the war and hold off the Russians and have some little wins and have some losses and back and forward. We've given wouldn't even be 1% of America's military equipment or whatever to Ukraine. And the stuff that's fucking sending, like Australia sent M113 vehicles. Like,
Yeah.
they were outdated in Vietnam. Like, the last
Mhm.
time Australia used them was Vietnam.
Yeah.
People are sending all this shit. You're like, bro, we're not sending them Abrams. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is, if we really gave a fuck, we'd be like, righto, here's 500 Abrams tanks.
Yeah.
These Paladins, here's this, here's that. But, oh no, we're giving you our old M777 towed artillery, and
Mhm.
you've had to beg for us to give you Excalibur rounds. Like, we have
Mhm.
not given them enough to win. We've given them enough to hold off the Russians for a long time.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why? You know, and that was my still opinion is we either should have given them everything to win,
No.
or no, sign a peace deal. We're not helping. And
That
now
that's
it's too late.
yeah.
Now we can't say no. Like, and that would be
Yeah.
the biggest fucking prick act. Is if
Yeah.
and I'd be in the street being like, no, fuck off, America and Australia. If America has said now, oh no, we're not giving you anything else, sign a peace deal. You go, well, the land hasn't changed. All we've done is lose
Yeah.
200,000 men on the front line for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a the game being played is disgusting, and the winners are the people who invest or own defense companies or in the government. Because I guarantee if you looked at a government official's portfolio in the stock market, it's full of, companies like Rheinmetall and Rolls Royce and things like that, and Saab and things that do a big military contract. And those companies being able to make and produce that stuff. I've done a bit of work in the defense private sector, and you don't think that companies that have big contracts with the army, with the Australian American army, aren't reaching out and going, well, hang on, because you sent this weapon overseas, it's now been like leaked and the Russians have it, so we need to rebuild and we need $1 billion contract. That's exactly what happened with the Javelin system. I just mind who make the Javelin. The country that make Jav have
Raytheon, not Raytheon, is it? I
no,
can't remember. I can't
yeah,
remember.
whoever it is, EOS or Raytheon or something. I think there might be a few, but have been well, a heap of them have been captured by the Russians, and that's all been reverse engineered. So there's a multi-billion-dollar contract going through to redevelop a new system.
Yeah.
Everyone wins. Well, the people that win are the people that own these companies. The winners in a war. Look at Afghanistan. The winners in the war are the defense contracts, and the 4,000 American men or whatever I think it was, and the 42 Australian guys was a byproduct of good business.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think that we could have rolled over Afghanistan? You don't think that NATO has the power? NATO, the US, Australia, whatever, didn't have the power to go Afghanistan. That's a problem. Okay, but between NATO countries and us, we have 10 million troops. We're going to put a troop abreast and just go east to west or north to south. You don't think we could have done that in Afghan?
Yeah.
But we're going to hang it out for 20 years because everyone's making so much fucking money off this war.
Yeah.
And
it didn't.
the
It
cost
made
of the war is
absolutely no sense. It made absolutely no sense for us to stay there, and not even economically or anything, because Afghanistan. I mean, and I'm sad to say it. I'm not talking shit on Afghanistan. I wish they could make something of their country, and I wish they could have a good life there. But they weren't going to contribute anything to the global economy for, I mean, the foreseeable future. And so there was actually really no viable reason for us to stay there other than to make money off of it, like
Yeah,
through the military complex.
of course not.
Yeah,
And
I mean
that's everything.
that's the only thing. And people, once again, we were able to do it because it was in the backwaters of the world, in the
Yep.
Middle East, in some shit in little country that nobody gave a fuck about. And they were Middle Easterners, and we've had, I mean, shit, probably going all the way back to the damn Crusades, didn't give a shit about Middle Easterners,
No, no, no.
and it's like, yeah, go ahead and spend 20 years there. Like, I mean, and the fact that we were even able to do that without, I don't know, people being in an uproar, and is just kind of beyond me, to be honest with you. But
Well, people always talk about, like, same with this with the states. People talk about, Putin's crazy, threatening nuclear weapons. What's the only country in the world that's actually used not one but two nuclear weapons against civilian targets? No fucking military targets.
Right.
Fucking states. And there's a bit of me like, I know it's in a different time. It's not that long. 80 years is not a long time. Like
Yeah.
my fucking grandpa grandfather I was with on the weekend, he was born before the before the Second World War. You know, like it's not that fucking long ago.
No.
You're like, hang on. It's a bit rich. It's a bit rich to be this and that. And you're like, hang on, who's actually done it? Who's actually used this? Um,
Not
and
to
I think
mention, I mean, if you
there's a
look at
fuck
all
around
the
of yeah.
if you look at all the military exploits over the past, I mean, over the past 100 years, I mean, after World War II, I mean, Russia, I mean, yeah, Russia's done some nasty shit. I mean,
Oh
they've done,
shit, yeah.
but kind of, but it's been a little bit more local to their area. I mean, the United States in the West, we've been much more far-reaching than Russia has been.
No,
And
Russia's
I mean, we have,
even Russia and Afghanistan. Russia's a shitload closer to Afghanistan through Kazakhstan, Tajikistan than fucking America is.
yeah,
And Grozny and Chechnya. Well, look where fucking Chechnya is on a map. And Ukraine, look where Ukraine is on a map.
hmm
Like
yeah,
America,
Vietnam. I mean,
Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam,
yeah,
what?
Korea. I mean,
Africa now? Like America's with all their special forces in Africa? Like, hang
yeah,
on. Like
yeah,
in Mali? Like what? Like
yeah,
look at America. There's a really good like infographic map of American offshore bases compared to Russian offshore bases. And Russia has like two bases that aren't in Russian territory, and they're
yeah,
in like Kazakhstan or something. And America has like 1,000.
yeah.
And this was Putin's thing about you calling me the aggressor. I'm not the country with a fleet of aircraft carriers and submarines constantly off my fucking coast. That's
Yeah.
America who's doing this. I'm not the aggressor in this. And before Ukraine, I agreed with Putin on that America is significantly more a bully of the world than Russia.
Yeah.
Significantly. Um, America has more troops in Australia than Australian troops, more
Mm.
combat troops, I should say. There's more American
Wow.
combat troops in Darwin, Australia, up far north, than Australian troops in Australia. You
I
don't
didn't
think
know
that these
that.
countries, like, you don't think that China's looking at that and going, what the fuck? Fuck
I
off.
don't even know
Yes,
where
no,
all we have troops at, to be honest with you. I
no,
mean,
you,
that's the
no,
crazy part. I don't even have any idea where all we have them.
well, America yesterday announced that there'll be a permanent posting of B-52 Stratofortress planes in Australia permanently. Nuclear
Really.
capable B-52s will permanently be in Australia.
Hmm.
Permanent. And we have the B-2s here all the time as well. The B-52s, B-2s in Australia, but now there's a permanent posting for them. You don't think that, and I'm not saying China's a good guy. I solemnly believe that China, as an Australian, they're absolutely the bad guys in so much around the world and within their own country of genocides there. But
Oh yeah.
you don't think that the Timorese, the Indonesians, the Southeast Asian countries, and then China is looking like, hang on, Australia's not threatening us, but America are literally on the other side of literally the other side of the world is deploying these nuclear capable aircraft. What
Hmm.
for? Holy shit. You don't think America's more aggressive? Like,
Yeah.
and
I
as an
think.
Australian, I'm like, thank fuck, because we have an incredibly rich country as far as minerals. Like insanely rich, and our defence force is very small. It's well known as the most professional small army in the world, but it's a small army. Our army is only 30,000 people or something. It's very fucking small. Well, there's more special forces troops in America than there are Australian troops just in general.
Wow.
And America, I think it's a good thing for defence of Australia. We need America to be here, but the rest of the world probably think, what the fuck are those Australians and Americans doing? Why does Australia through America is buying whatever the new B2 is, the B2 radar or whatever it is,
Hmm.
the new stealth nuclear bomber. The B2s are made for nothing but dropping a nuclear weapon.
Right.
I don't care if they drop some JDAMs or whatever in Afghanistan or Iraq. They're
To
not
see
made
how
for
they
that.
work, right?
They are not made for that. Do you really think that Afghan, Iraq, X other countries had any radar system or any system that could even shoot down F-16? No. They might have got some luck with some AA guns and some shit, but realistically, no. So the B2s, they use them there to give them a fucking try out and get the cobwebs out of the engine.
Mhm.
They're solely made in the Cold War, solely made to drop nuclear weapons on a near peer enemy.
Wow.
And the Australian contract of buying the new B-2 Raiders with America in Australia. You don't think that there's a bully of the world going on, like that China aren't like, China are doing it as well, but you don't think there's other countries are like, what the fuck? Like, you're escalating this, not us. Like, we're escalating at the same speed as you, but you're the ones doing that first step, which I'm
Yeah,
glad for as an Australian, as a an ex-combatant in Australia, but at the same time, we are very naive to how the rest of the world actually perceive us and see us as fucking bullies.
yeah. And I've even wondered, once again, like how some, and I know there's a lot of countries that don't like the United States, but I've even wondered how some, like just the average person in Europe even views the United States, because there's a lot of people in Europe that, they don't believe in going and being a bully and picking fights with everybody around the world and stuff like that. And we kind of parade around as, the big guy on the block and stuff like that. But I've already wondered if they're just like, can America just shut up and sit down for a while? Like, I mean, I just have to wonder sometimes, because I'm like, and once again, we're here in America. You would think that we would hear the opinions of people around the world, but you don't, because
Oh,
even here in the land of the free, we are very much spoon fed the things that they want us to hear. I mean, we call
absolutely.
ourselves the land of the free, but I mean, we can't even go buy unpasteurized milk from the dairy farmer across the road. I mean, it's like, no,
Yeah,
we're not.
yeah, yeah, yeah. America is, and that's the thing is, you look at even look at like chemicals in foods and things in America, and it's like, holy fuck, like this is not the land of the free.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
holy shit. Now I'm not saying I'm not defending that Australia is. Of course we're not. We don't have freedom of speech in the Constitution, things like that. But realistically, does America actually live up to the name of the land of the free? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely not. Um,
Well, we've been taught that it's banked on our Second Amendment rights or ability to own a gun, but I actually think that has backfired. I'm not saying that I don't believe in being able to own a gun. Okay, that's fine. I'm not speaking against that. But what people have done is that they've made that their mountain to die on. So
yes,
they believe that as long as they have the ability to own a gun, that they're free, and that's how they're going to stand up against the government. But then everything else gets eroded away,
yes,
and they're like, "Oh, but we still have our guns," and it's like, "Yeah, but you're being fucking taxed to death. You can't, like I said, you can't go and you can't even buy unpasteurized milk.
yeah.
You can, like, I mean, there's all these things that there, like, when it comes to democracy, we're not even ranked in the top 10 in the world."
No, of course not. Of course not. Oh, it's yeah, like a lot of things like America, Australia, whatever. The word democracy is used pretty fucking loosely. Like Australia, say, for example, and I always laugh at this. Australia, I love Australia. Don't get me wrong, I'm a fucking very passionate Australian. Um,
Mhm.
but we have mandatory voting. If you don't vote in the federal election, you will be fined. It's a few $100s.
No
And I'm
shit.
like, hang on. If we're a democratic country and we're democratically electing a leader, yet it's mandatory to vote, isn't that like the most undemocratic fucking thing ever?
Yeah, yeah.
And Australia cops a lot of shit internationally because of Melbourne. In my opinion, this is Willie putting a tinfoil hat on. Tax and voting are specifically made very hard to understand, so dumb people won't understand it. That is, and in Australia, I think, like they've purposely, in a way, made the tax system and voting difficult and hard. You only understand it if you care about it. So the average person, maybe, or a lower socioeconomic person, who might be, a bit like less bright than someone, doesn't understand it and doesn't have full control over it. Because our tax system is like, I run my own business, is unbelievably fucking complex. And I'm like, hang on, it's almost like this is purposely made like this so people don't fight it and don't go against it. And it's a little bit like that. But
Mhm.
Australia cop a lot of shit internationally, especially from America, about being a socialist country. And where that comes from is that people have this illusion. Well, the same in America. People think America is LA. You think American, they think there. You think Hollywood, California. when everyone knows, oh, you and me know that that's fuck all. That's a tiny part of America.
Yeah.
Australia is the same. The things you see about Australia on the news, about the cops buddy paintballing people at the War Memorial and these anti-maskers or these pro-maskers, whatever. That's all of Melbourne, man. And Melbourne is the LA of Australia. The rest, the like I live in Adelaide, and Adelaide's like fucking redneck bogan as fuck. Like
Yeah.
it's like the Texas of America. Like most of Australia is not like that.
Right.
Most Australians, and we aren't as freedom loving as America. Most Australians are like, well, and it's just different people. But it's like as long as we have healthcare and no one's living, well, we try and limit the amount of people living in complete poverty, and I can go to the beach and have a surf. Do what you want. Now, whether that's a good or bad thing is up to your viewers, listeners' discretion. But Australians are different people to Americans. We don't hang our hat on complete freedoms.
Yeah.
But there's the exact reason that Australia has never had a man on the moon. That is the exact reason Australia doesn't have trillion-dollar companies, Amazon, Tesla, Apple. That's the reason we don't have that. The reason America does is those complete freedoms and that complete free capital market, things like that. That is the reason you can have that in America, and you could not have that in Australia. Even if Australia had the same population, you would not have that because of the type of people and the way our system works with the freedoms. You can't have that. We're not as capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
But the argument is, and don't get me wrong, I'm a capitalist democracy, capitalism all the way. But is the average Australian happier, smarter, and healthier than the average American? Absolutely. And is the average Swede or Finn smarter, healthier, happier, richer than the average American or Australian? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where sometimes I have to sort of turn back my capitalist mindset a bit because I invest a lot, invest a lot of money, and I do this and do that, and I work. I'm a business, and I'm at 40% tax bracket and all this, and I'm like, this is fucking bullshit, all this, and then sometimes I turn back in my brain and go, oh well, yeah,
Well,
fucking
that's
some of this social stuff is some of this is actually important. If I fall over and break, like, public health is a ripoff for so many people. It is. I like public health care, and the Americans, someone fucking pays for it. The tax, you do pay for it in Australia. Of course you do. It's called the Medicare levy. You pay for your tax. But when I got diagnosed with my brain tumor, I say to people, if Medicare didn't exist in Australia, if I lived in America with this, not only would I have cancer, I'd be fucking broke. And I'm like, fuck. And every American would say someone like me, an ex-serving member who blah, 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 whatever, shouldn't have to then cover an absolute, like, I get it. If you've smoked your whole life and get lung cancer, I understand the argument behind, hey, fuck off. You shouldn't be getting $1 million of free treatment. But if you're a kid with a brain tumor or whatever, you shouldn't be running broke from this bullshit. And
well,
I think Americans love bringing up on all sides of an argument, 1% arguments of things, and it's like, hang on, no. Like, yeah, it's a very difficult one with where we sit and where we should go with freedoms and whatever, and But I was just defending Australia as far as like we get this socialist name from Melbourne, and people are like, I'm never visiting Australia because it's a socialist shithole, and I'm like, no, fuck off. Come to like Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, you'll fucking love it.
Yeah, I haven't so much heard. I mean, which once again, I don't live in New York or California or anything. But I haven't really heard people talk about Australia as a socialist country either, because Canada, they have public health system and all that kind of stuff too, and we don't call them socialist either. But I find it hard that most of the time the people who are defending the 1% are the people who are getting fucked by them.
Yes.
And here in the United States, it couldn't be more true. And on the grounds of possibly being called I mean, they'll call me anything, socialist, communist, whatever. I've already been called it all. But for being a little bit critical of the of capitalism, the way that we have it here is that, like, yeah, you absolutely can go out there and start a business like Amazon and become the next billionaire or trillionaire, whatever. I don't know, billionaire, of course. But there are so many people who are going after that, and they're just absolutely miserable. They're just absolutely miserable people. They're not happy. They're not healthy. They're wasting their lives away. in pursuit of being a small business owner. You know, everybody around here is a small business owner, but there
Mm.
are some grouchy sons of bitches because they, and not just grouchy, but even just like sad because they just see. I've run into so many people just in the last 2 years that are just like, what the hell am I doing? Like my kids are growing up and I'm not around. Like I'm never at home. Like I never spend time with my wife. It's all work, eat, sleep the whole time. That's all people do. There's a lot of people that don't even have hobbies
Yeah,
because they're so dedicated to going to work to make money. And
yeah,
and
yeah,
you have to do it because you also, I mean, health insurance costs you freaking $1,200 a month for a family of four. You
yeah,
have to go work like crazy to pay for that.
yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
And
what.
and so that's the thing is that I don't, but as long as you have your Second Amendment, you're free. And
Yeah.
as long as you have capitalism, you're okay. That's the best system in the world. And it's like, no, I mean,
Yeah. The Second Amendment never protected America. What protected America and made America great is freedom of speech.
right.
That's the thing. As long as you can, because that's the whole thing. The pen is mightier than the sword. And the funny thing is, I'm pro Second Amendment for Americans. Like, of course, you should be able to have a gun. But what the most stupid argument is, oh, we could take on a radical government. That is like, I'm like, homie, you go to the range once a month with your fucking AR, with your bump stock, and like, bro, I was in the army. Trust me, you're not having the Marines are gonna fucking clear. Like, what are you gonna do
Mhm.
when an Abrams tank rolls down the fucking street?
I know.
Okay, sure. The thing that stops that is freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And the great about America, and although the universities are absolutely trying to close this down in countries like ours, is freedom of speech. Is being able to have opinion on whatever side and talk it out and come to a rational conclusion.
Hmm.
Um, Freedom of speech is the protector, not your gun. And the only
Right.
reason you can say I should be able to own a gun, and the only reason X person can say you shouldn't be able to own a gun, is freedom of speech, not because you've got a gun.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
That's the protector. Yeah. And
And
that's the
that's
reason
very
America is
good.
the country it is in its constitution. It puts that you can speak your mind,
Yeah.
not that you can have a not because you can have a weapon.
So you did talk about your brain tumor and how
Mm.
that was covered obviously by your public healthcare system and stuff. But how has that affected your worldview? I mean, have you taken some of these things, like have you always thought the way that you do now, like even before you had your brain tumor, or has that affected just how you
Uh,
view your family, your relationships,
yeah,
religion, anything?
yeah. Well, it's reaffirmed, and most of your listeners might be American, and this might be against, but it's reaffirmed my disbelief in religion, um, because I've sat in a lot of chemotherapy wards with little kids who are dying of tumors, and the next week I go to get another round of chemo, and they're not there, and I'm like, nah. Like, and it's reaffirmed that I don't believe in God, and even further, it's like if God's real, I'll tell him he's a fucking asshole.
Right.
And I've seen kids, dying in countries like
Yeah.
Ukraine and Afghan, where I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Your religion is based geographically only. God cares about the Australian kids or the kids that don't have a brain tumor. Fuck off. So that's become my view on that. Like, and of course, I respect people of religion. I never say that you shouldn't be able to think what you think. But that's just my personal thing. Is I'm just not.
Hmm.
Um, and my relationships, um, I'm a lot more empathetic than I used to be. I was an infantryman, fucking grunt, I didn't give a shit. I'm a lot more empathetic to people's
Yeah.
issues, and that I understand people have shit going on because I've gone through it. Um, and my worldview, I think, has become a lot tighter amongst like my really close friends and family. My family's got a lot closer because of this, and I've really stared death in the face. Well, more than once on occasion, but I've stared death in the face a lot. And you think about someone with my tumor that's guaranteed to kill you eventually. Like, well, what is really important to me? And I've cut off a lot of relationships in my life, friends and partners and things, because I don't have the time to deal with the bullshit. Um, and I wish people realized. I think it's not till people get a lot older they realize they don't have that much time. And I'm in many ways grateful and lucky that I was 20, early 20s when I got, um, diagnosed with this, and it was like, shit, I don't have that much time. I can't. I don't want to live spending all my time dwelling on things that I can't really change. And I remember my OC in the army telling me when I was diagnosed, he's, well, Willie, as everything, control the controllables. And that's something I've lived by. And it's like, holy shit, like, yeah, you need to control what you can. And I can't control, well, you can control your health. And a lot of people deny that you can control health, fitness and food and whatever. But something like a brain tumor like this, you can't control, there's no controlling. It doesn't matter
Hmm.
if you eat this fucking root from the Amazon. It doesn't fucking help.
Yeah.
It's funny, the oncologist will say to you, Willie, because I've brought up with like, oh, this person's you're like, mate, trust me, if fucking eating this diet or eating this food would cure this, trust me, it'd be a lot fucking cheaper for us to do because this chemo is 4,000 rounds a hit, like $4,000 a hit. Like, he's like, trust me, I care about the whole conspiracy around all the oncologists know the cure to cancer. Bullshit. The oncologists are the most lovely people in the world who are dealing with kids who are dying all day. And it's like, if we knew, we'd know. And if it was that simple, we'd do it.
Yeah.
That's just conspiracy.
Hmm.
Of course, medical companies have involvement, but at the end product, the doctors, no, there's
Hmm.
no conspiracy at that end product.
Sure. Yeah.
But but yeah, I can't speak on the big pharma, especially in America. Big pharma's a big fucking problem.
Yes.
Um, and it's given me that worldview. And the big one I think too is that you're not that important. Probably the big realization for me was the world marches on without you. It just does. The sun's going to come up tomorrow, and my thing is like, if you ever feel yourself, slipping a bit, zoom out. Zoom out, you realize you're not that important. You're like even the globe, even Earth is a fucking speck of dust somewhere. That's it. You know, zoom out, and it's not that big of an issue.
Mhm.
Um, and sort of live by that, and look after your controllables in your life. It's your actual controllables are not that much, really. Like the sun's
Mhm.
coming up, this is happening, and to a degree, if someone pulls out in front of your car and kills you, that's also not a controllable to a degree. Your
Mhm.
controllables everyday life is how you treat your friends and family,
Mhm.
and your community. That's your big controllable, and I think a lot of people don't care about controlling that. That you can improve your relationship, you can improve your relationship with your friends and this and that, and to do it. And everyone knows the right thing to do. Everyone knows what you should say in a scenario with your family. I should tell mum. I should call mum and tell her I love her, and I should blah blah blah. Everyone knows these things. Everyone knows it, but to actually put into practice is not. Well, to put into practice is very fucking easy. It's just doing it again and again and again. Is very forget. You can just forget to do it and take it for granted, and don't take those things and your own health and whatever for granted. And I'm like, fuck, when I was 21 or whatever, living without this, I didn't give a fuck in the world. I was so blissful. And my thing is like, if you are a person who's living, you've got your health and you've got your family, enjoy it while you can, because it eventually will end. Those good times end eventually.
Your partner that you're with,
Hmm.
were you with her before you found out about this or after?
Yeah, I was with her before it. We were very early in a relationship.
Okay.
We were together, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 weeks before. Not very long at all. And then after diagnosis, I broke things off for a few months because it was just I was like, holy shit, I don't want this. And then we have got back together and been together a few years. And she's like me, she knows we can't really do much about this, and ride it out, and then eventually things will end for me, and those good times remain.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, I'm assuming that relationship, because of how she handled that, is probably extremely special to you then.
Of course, yes.
I mean, do you have anything that you want to close out with? I mean, do you have anything that you wanted to talk about, that you wanted to share? I mean, we've kind of been going on.
No, like, look, um, as far as like the Ukraine stuff and whatever, like, if people want to reach out to me about it or whatever, and I think I made 80 to 100 videos on my time while I was there, and I'm still producing stuff. That it might give a good idea to the human aspect of it and what's going on.
The
If people,
interviews of the
yeah,
foreign fighters over there
yeah,
are some of the most awesome things, like as far as putting a real perspective on it, that I've seen
mm,
anywhere. think
Yeah,
that's
well,
awesome.
I've got more. I've got some more of those coming up and planned and everything because that interests me, especially like the American or Australian lads. I'm like, like it interests me, that idea of going to fight for a nation that is not yours. And I literally have a message on my phone right now. I just clicked popped up, that it was one like my best mate. Just goes, oh, one of my other good mates, from 2RA, which is like the 2nd Battalion here, has got killed in Ukraine yesterday.
Oh,
And that it interests me. Like I didn't know this guy, I don't think, but it's a very interesting thing of like, why go and fight, and these savages, and like just the savageness of that war. So that's interesting. So I really appreciate the compliment, man. It's
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. And I would encourage anybody to go over there and check out your channel about that stuff. I mean, it really was one of the. I don't really watch too much about it, and that was one of the channels I do watch just because of the interviews and stuff that you do.
Mm.
So I think that's awesome. So, but I will actually make sure that I link all of your stuff. I left my life of just extreme conservative, politically, religious, like all of that type of stuff. I'm kind of, I guess, reprioritizing some things. So I'm just kind of more or less documenting the conversations I'm having with people, and I'm trying to have it with as many different people as I can. So, and you're
But
one
it's
of them.
just it's such a slow grind, man. Like, and like a lot of people get disheartened with podcasts. Podcasting is fucking hard, bro. Like, you and me, we're both podcasters. Like, we are the interviewers, not the interviewees, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So this conversation flows fairly um, easily. But what people don't understand is how hard of a job that you actually have doing this. It's very difficult. Man, like I've done a lot of podcasts like on your side of the fence now, and it's hard. People don't understand it's hard, and people get disheartened because it takes a long time to build. It's fucking stressful every time. You're like, oh my god, what if this just doesn't flow? What if like it's
Yeah.
hard, man. Like keep up with it, and yeah, you're really good.
Yeah. Well, you've made it easy. I really appreciate it. I mean, you didn't have any problem talking about it, and you talked about interesting stuff, and you talked about things that mattered. So I didn't really want to try to steer that because you were, I mean, you hit all good points and everything. So I appreciate it.
Ah, thanks, mate.
Yeah. And yeah, I once again I want to thank you for your time, and I want to let you go. It's getting kind of late over here in my neck of the woods too. So I very much appreciate it, and maybe one of these times we'll catch up again.
Hell yeah, we'll do it. We'll do this live over a beer one day. That'll be. I'm coming to the States next year for a month or two. So
All
I'm
right.
hoping to catch up with a lot of the mates, including yourself over there. It'd be fantastic.
Oh yeah, if you come by, definitely let me know. I'd love to meet up with you.
You're awesome, man. Right, I will look after yourself, bro.
All right, man. You have a great one.
Okay, bye.